Welcome back to Midnight Signal AI. Today is June 26th, 2026, and the biggest stories are about control, timing, and who gets access first.
Yeah, it's one of those days where the headline isn't just what shipped, it's who can use it, when, and under what terms. We've got frontier model politics, custom silicon, and more agent tooling in the mix.
Let's start with the most consequential move, because OpenAI is in the middle of a very unusual rollout story.
That's a big signal. If the report is right, OpenAI isn't treating this like a normal consumer launch at all. A government first or government approved phase changes the whole story. It turns the model into both a product and a policy object.
And the delay angle matters just as much as the access angle. If the administration is asking for a staggered release over cybersecurity concerns, that suggests the pressure isn't only about capability, it's about blast radius.
Right. The practical takeaway is that frontier launches are no longer just engineering events. They're now coordinated with security review, institutional buyers, and public sector scrutiny. That's a very different operating environment than the one AI companies were used to even a year ago.
Speaking of OpenAI, the next story is about infrastructure, and it's the kind of move that can quietly reshape margins across the whole stack.
This is exactly the kind of story where the first order takeaway is chips, but the second order takeaway is leverage. If OpenAI really has a custom inference path for ChatGPT and Codex, then it's chasing lower cost for query and less dependence on Nvidia at the same time.
And that's why it matters beyond OpenAI. If the company can prove this works, every other frontier lab gets a sharper incentive to either build its own silicon path or negotiate harder for capacity.
Also, custom chips are never just about performance. They're about predictability. A model company that can better forecast its cost structure can price products more aggressively, expand usage, or both.
Switching to Anthropic now, because the company has a different kind of pressure today, not just product velocity, but access limits and security scrutiny.
This one feels like the mirror image of the OpenAI story. Instead of a company choosing staged access, Anthropic appears to be dealing with external pressure that could shape how broadly Claude Fable 5 gets used.
Exactly. And whether you like the policy or not, it underscores the same reality. The biggest models are now governed by more than benchmarks. Security, geopolitics, and institutional trust all sit in the release path.
Which means the market is starting to price in not only model quality, but model permissioning. That's a real shift from the old ship first, iterate later mindset.
On a more product-forward Anthropic note, the company is also experimenting with how Claude shows up on mobile.
That's a smart direction. If a model can feel coherent across desktop and phone, it stops being a novelty and starts becoming part of the workday.
And the phrase desktop-like is doing a lot of work there. It suggests Anthropic is trying to preserve the richer, more deliberate experience people want for agent workflows, instead of forcing everything into a stripped-down chat window.
That matters because the next phase of competition may not be about whose model is smartest on a benchmark. It may be about whose interface makes the model easiest to supervise, steer, and reuse.
Speaking of steering and reuse, Anthropic is also pushing deeper into workplace infrastructure with Slack.
This is where Anthropic starts to look less like a model vendor and more like a workflow company. If MCP makes Claude easier to plug into Slack conversations, then the assistant is sitting right where decisions happen.
And the distribution logic is strong. People don't want to start a separate tab just to ask a question they could resolve in the thread they're already in.
But the trade-off is governance. Once you embed an agent inside collaboration software, you need permissions, auditability, and clear boundaries, or you end up with a very expensive compliance headache.
One more launch worth noting today is a smaller one, but it points to the same broader trend. AI-native knowledge tools are getting more ambitious.
I like this one because it shows where the ecosystem is heading, even when it's not coming from a giant lab. The next wave isn't just chatbots, it's the surrounding surfaces, docs, terminals, notebooks, and shared workspaces.
Exactly, and OpenKnowledge is a reminder that not every competitive moat has to be a closed platform. For some users, the moat is privacy, local control, and being able to wire the tools together themselves. Over in the Silicon world, OpenAI is reportedly pushing ahead on its own custom AI chip, codenamed Jalapeño. And that is a big strategic move, because the real cost of AI is not just training the models, it is running them at scale, every second, for millions of users. If you can squeeze more performance out of dedicated hardware, you can speed up responses and cut the bill at the same time.
Right, and once a company is big enough, buying every chip from the outside starts to look less like convenience and more like dependency. A custom part lets them tune for their own workloads instead of adapting the model to someone else's architecture.
Exactly. It's the same playbook we've seen from the cloud giants. Build enough of your own stack, and suddenly you have more control over cost, supply, and roadmap. The catch is that chip design is brutally difficult. Even a strong team can spend years getting from concept to something that's actually competitive.
So the headline isn't just that OpenAI wants a faster chip, it's that AI companies are becoming hardware companies whether they plan to or not. That's where the arms race is heading.
And to end on a lighter note, there's a little newsroom humor in the idea of jobs being AI bulletproof. The piece is really just reminding people that not every role is on the chopping block. Some jobs are still hard to automate because they require judgment, trust, or hands-on work.
Which honestly is comforting. The future may be very automated, but there's still a long list of things people want another person to do, or at least to double check. Across today's stories, a few things stand out. First, access and approval are becoming part of the model release itself, not an afterthought. Second, OpenAI and Anthropic are both pushing hard on the infrastructure and workflow layers around their models. And third, the next battleground may be less about raw model demos and more about trust, control, and where AI sits inside real work.
That's it for today's briefing. We'll keep tracking the release drama, the silicon shift, and the enterprise integrations as they develop. Until next time, keep building, keep questioning.